2013, the state of Wisconsin, Latinos became the second largest ethnic racial population in the state of Wisconsin, signaling that it was following that demographic shift, those patterns that were taking place for decades in the Southwest, in Nueva York, and in Florida, are now taking place here in Wisconsin.
There are about 75,000 immigration unauthorized brothers and sisters in Wisconsin, many of whom have been with us for decades.
Yo nací en Irimbo, Michoacán, México. Cuando yo estuve con mis papás, para mí fue una vida excelente. Mi papá era una persona muy trabajadora, nos enseñó a luchar por la vida. Y de allí pues pasé mi niñez, pasé mi adolescencia. Se llegó el momento en que tomé la decisión de casarme. En el 96 mi esposo falleció. Me quedé sola con mis hijos, sin casa, en la calle. Era cuando yo sufrí mucho porque mis hijos dormían sin comida. Me pedían comida y no la tenía. De allí dos muchachas me invitaron, Lupe, vámonos a Estados Unidos. Me vine. Llegué aquí a Chicago, duró un tiempo. Según yo, venía por 2 años.
Hace 19 años que estoy aquí. Y de verdad que venía por 2 años y ya tengo 19 años acá. Yo en mi país dejé a mi mamá, dejé a toda mi familia, mis hermanos, mis hermanas, pues toda mi familia. Aquí en Estados Unidos no tengo familia.
I came to the United States when I was 4 years of age with my mother, and I've been here ever since. My family decided to leave our home country because over there's not many educational opportunities for you to better yourself, and also at that time there wasn't many good paying jobs, so it was hard to sustain a family over there. And so that's why we came over here to the United States to have a better life.
Cuando iniciamos el cruce de la frontera, veníamos, la persona que nos acompañaba venía con nosotros. Llegamos a un espacio horrible. Había serpientes, había animales que corríamos el peligro de que nos mordieran, nos picaran. Pero así pasamos esa frontera, sin comer, sin tomar agua. Pero yo no me importaba no comer, no me importaba la sed que traía, sino venir a luchar por mis hijos para poderles arrimar una comida para que por lo menos eso tuvieran.
Yo crucé la frontera de una manera muy drástica porque me vine por el cerro. Primera vez vine con unos polleros, pero el pollero nos abandonó y tuvimos que caminar muchas horas hacia la carretera para poder pedir ayuda, agua incluso, y esa fue la primera vez. Nos agarró la policía y nos llevó a la frontera y nos regresó para atrás. Pero pues yo volví a insistir y pues a la tercera vez pasé. Pero sí fue un viacrucis porque en el camino pues se quedó un centroamericano que ya no pudo continuar porque ya no podía, entonces lo abandonaron ahí, pero nosotros cruzamos la frontera. Es bastante peligroso y la verdad es tremenda experiencia cruzar en la frontera así.
Nobody wakes up one day and says, today is the day that I will leave my country. I will leave what I know, what I love, you know, where I'm from, to go work in an industry that will exploit me.
would venture that most farms, if they're hiring high schoolers, they're paying probably anywhere from $10, $12 an hour. But no one can live at $10, $12 an hour. I mean, even, so to say, undocumented immigrant labor that is working for these dairies, they're being exploited. 900 dairy farms are producing, I think, close to 70% of the milk in the state. Rather interesting, the undocumented people that are doing this, estimated by economists, is roughly 7,900. 7,900 undocumented people are the basis for 11% of the state gross product.
80% of Latinos, of the Latino workforce, works in essential jobs, would have been as essential during this pandemic. In the state of Wisconsin, we know that Latino workforce can be found in larger numbers in certain industries. For example, in agriculture as an industry, in the construction as an industry, in the service industry, in the hotel industry. So these are industries that employ large numbers of Latinx immigrant workers, which many of those within that population are considered unauthorized immigrants. We know that in Wisconsin, there's approximately 400,000 Latinos. 27% are immigrants. If we take in the undercount demographers tell us about, that could be up to 18% more than that number. We know that in Wisconsin, also in the K-12 public school system, there's 100,000 Latinx students in the state of Wisconsin. We know that the vast majority of dairy industry workers, those that milk the cows, those that care for the stock, are Latino, and the majority are immigrants, with a large percentage of them undocumented. It's ironic that the industry that gives Wisconsinite much of their collective identity only survives and thrives because of Latinx, immigrant, and mostly undocumented workers. The dairy industry would not be able to function without the workforce that it has. The dairy industry, it would collapse, quite simply. There would have to be massive recruitment efforts of workers by the dairy industry, for example.
Las vacas que ya su producción es menor y puede ser por dos razones. Una, que la vaca está enferma, y otra, que ya su periodo de lactancia ya va disminuyendo. Y ese es el motivo por el cual ustedes pueden ver aquí el material que yo utilizo para poderlas yo tratar.
Food has been highly dependent on Latino, immigrant, and non-immigrant labor, for well over a century. Not just here in Wisconsin, but across, at least moving west, who are recruited to come work in the food industry, in packaging of food, for example, in the beef processing industry, in the pork processing industry, that are year-round workers, right, as well. So we look at plants, for example, in Milwaukee, in Green Bay, and if we talk to the folks that work there, the majority will speak to you in Spanish, because that's who the workforce is.
This is a dairy farm. We produce milk from about 450 dairy cows. So my parents moved here. They moved here in 1968 and started farming here. And I was born in 1969 and have been farming here my whole life. Most of our employees are from Mexico. At this point, I only have one employee who was born here in the United States, but everybody else that works here was in fact born in Mexico. For the most part, our Mexican employees have been very, very good employees, and I think part of that is because a lot of the folks that I've had come to work for us are very focused on doing their job and doing it well and making as much money as they can, because oftentimes they're supporting family back home, and they have a vision, they have a dream, they're driven, you know.
Mi trabajo básicamente es dependiendo del turno que yo me encuentre. Si estoy en la mañana, yo tengo que estar atento al grupo de ordeña porque yo, aparte de estar vacunando, aparte de estar checando las vacas su salud, yo tengo que también observar la calidad de la leche.
Immigrants, workers, and immigrant undocumented workers are absolutely essential to the economic stability of our state and our country. Without immigrant labor, many of the necessities that we take for granted are not there. And were studies of workers across the country and who were the essential workers. Right? And once those studies started to show, we start seeing just how important this workforce is to the vitality of our population. Now let's layer that with this conversation about taxes. That Latinx immigrants, undocumented workers, do not pay taxes or are freeloaders. They're here to steal your jobs. They're here to free to load off the system. And we have been saying this for decades. Is simply not true. We know that you don't qualify at this point for most, federal and state benefits if you don't have a social security number.
Nosotros así hacemos impuestos. Desde que venimos acá, yo creo que el primer año hicimos lo de las taxas y seguimos haciendo taxas. Todos los inmigrantes hacemos taxas.
Yo no he recibido una ayuda de gobierno, yo no he recibido nada de nadie. ¿Por qué? Por lo mismo, porque no tengo derechos. Solicito un servicio médico, no tengo derechos, no me lo aprueban. Yo pago mis impuestos, yo aporto cada que es necesario. A mí no me da nada. Todo lo que yo tengo, lo que no tengo, lo que disfruto, me cuesta trabajo ganarlo y tenerlo.
The misconception that undocumented people don't pay taxes is completely false. We do pay taxes and we contribute to the community as much as anyone else does.
Undocumented workers are taxed just like anybody else, right? And we're just talking about the tax while they're working, right? So they're taxed federal taxes, they're taxed state taxes, payroll taxes, and do not have access to any of these services or any of the benefits that come from those taxes. So that right there is one of the big ironies that folks don't like to talk about, is that undocumented workers literally pump billions of dollars into the Social Security system.
Correct, yes.
That benefits, our elderly folks, our retired folks in this country, that they will never have access to at this point.
In our area right now, there's plenty of jobs for everyone. There's more than enough jobs to go around, and I don't care where you came from or what color you are, there is work out there if you're willing to work. There's no doubt about that. This notion that, immigrants are taking, quote, our jobs, we've not found that to be the case. And prior to hiring people, from outside the country, obviously we tried to procure employees from wherever we could, but, we just didn't have a lot of people necessarily applying. That didn't seem to matter as far as pay or, it just was tough, tough finding people.
El inmigrante viene a hacer un trabajo que nuestros compañeros americanos no quieren hacer. El emigrante, él no le importa sea lluvia, nieve, tormenta, él está en el trabajo. Más en las lecherías, tú vas a las lecherías, a los ranchos grandes y tú ves puros inmigrantes. No le importa trabajar 12, 20 horas, ellos están ahí.
I think a lot of people in Wisconsin still have the idea that we are just here to steal their jobs. I think that if anything, we're the ones that are doing the dirty jobs, the jobs that Americans don't want to do. And the statement that we're the ones stealing the jobs, I think is very racist.
People emigrate from their countries of origin because they are desperate. They are fleeing because their lives are in danger, or they cannot find employment and or cannot feed their children. People from certain countries cannot immigrate to USA legally because, number one, wait times for immigration visa availability for people in certain countries exceed 20 years. Number two, there is currently no path to U.S. citizenship for those in the U.S. who are undocumented. There is no affirmative way to apply to fix your status under current law. Number three, those who might qualify as a family member of a lawful permanent resident or a U.S. citizen face many barriers due to prohibitive eligibility requirements. Immigrating legally to the U.S. is close to impossible for people in desperate situations.
I wish we would get to a point where we would just recognize that all people in this country, regardless of citizenship, regardless of immigration status, have a right to have dignified lives. People have a right to education. They have a right to dignified workplaces. People have a right to be able to live without fear.
During my high school years, I still didn't have DACA, so I was not able to get any scholarships because of the requirement to have a social security number, because of the requirement to be a U.S. citizen, documented immigrant. It was 10 times harder for me, and it just limited my resources. You can't do FAFSA, you can't get any money, like any federal money for college. On top of that, as an undocumented student, a lot of public schools, which are more affordable, actually require you to pay out of state tuition. So that's another thing. It's like you have to pay double of what you can't already afford.
Pues gracias a Dios, mis hijos trabajan, yo trabajo, nos apoyamos. Lo único que me afecta aquí es no poder estar libremente, salir sin miedo, salir sin precaución de que qué va a pasar si me detienen por no licencia.
Racism and xenophobia have plagued our country for centuries. This idea that we can justify the exploitation of people based on their ethnicity, based on their race, based on where they were born, or where their ancestry is something that continues to harm us as a society. Mm-hmm. It's something that we as individuals deal with on a daily basis, and hopefully, I am hopeful that there is change coming for our country that would benefit everybody, because generations change and people change and ideas change and culture change, and they tend to move away from the rhetoric of hate.
Yo lo más importante en mi vida, pediría hasta con lágrimas de mis ojos, con mi corazón en la mano, que no nos ignoren, que no nos discriminen, que nos den una ciudadanía para que tengamos un futuro eficaz, un futuro mejor y que seamos más tomados en cuenta.
My dream as an undocumented student is to just have a better life and to be able to contribute to my community. But also as a nurse, I'm hoping to stay here in Wisconsin after I graduate and work as a nurse in Wisconsin. And so I think that a message that I would give to them is that a lot of us are here not because we want to, but because we don't have a choice. But we are still contributing to the community, opening up resources, opening up businesses that is going to help everyone, because we also contribute to the community as a whole.
Hay de todo en este país. Ahí tenemos gente que le caemos bien, americanos que les caemos muy bien y americanos que pues, nos ven como siempre como extraños. Y ya no somos extraños en este país. Somos una gente que aporta algo de su cultura, que aporta su esfuerzo para que llevemos un un producto a la mesa, ya llámese vegetales, llámese lechería, queso. Es muy extenso porque en todas las áreas están los inmigrantes.